Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar on Artificial Intelligence and Impact Assessment, Keeping the Human in the Loop, Technology Supporting E&S Management. There are over 1,400 people registered for today's webinar from over 100 different countries, so thank you all for joining us today. We are so excited to have you here with us. Today's webinar is being hosted in part by the International Association for Impact Assessment, or IAIA. IAIA is the leading global network on sharing best practice for using impact assessment to make better and more informed decisions. My name is Keisha Blaser. I work with IAIA, and I'll be behind the scenes on today's webinar to make sure things run smoothly. If you hear something today during the webinar that you'd like to share on social media, please feel free to do so. You can see our X handle there at IAIA Network, as well as a hashtag you can use along with what you share, hashtag IAIA Webinar. Now, before we get started, I want to invite you all to check out our website at IAIA.org to see all we have to offer there. So first, there are a lot of resources for you to check out, including on-demand recordings of our previous webinars. So as you may know, our webinars cover a variety of topics. You see a few there on the screen: human rights, HIA, and digital IA, but there are a variety of other topics, including biodiversity, social risk management, mitigation hierarchy, and a bunch of other topics. So please check out our webinars page and find on-demand videos that may interest you. Next, I'd like to highlight some of our upcoming events. So first, we have our annual conference, IAIA 25, which this year is going to be held in Bologna, Italy. And the theme for this year's conference is Artificial Intelligence and Impact Assessment. So especially since you are registered for today's webinar, that topic is likely of interest to you. So I'd really encourage you to go to our website to see what it looks like to attend a conference and see if it might be an option for you this year. We also have a symposium happening in Antigua, Guatemala on the 6th and 7th of November, and that is on infrastructure and the environment. So again, if you are interested in that topic, please check out our website and find more information about the symposium, how you can get registered, and what it looks like to attend. Now, in addition to webinars, we also have a variety of online training options. So we have our online training courses, which are short form courses. They are all on Zoom sessions and typically 3 to 4 sessions covering a couple weeks. And there's a variety of topics. Right now we have registration open for a couple different courses on writing impact assessments and how to write more effectively, conflict management, and leadership, as well as public participation strategies. And then finally, in addition to our online training, we also have a variety of resources and downloadable publications. So whether you're looking for something short and sweet like our fast tips or something more involved like our best practice principles, I invite you to go check out our website and learn more about those. Now, a few pieces of housekeeping before we get started. Yes, we are recording today's webinar, and since you're registered for the webinar, you'll receive an email with a link to the recording as well as the slides within a day or two of this live broadcast. And I will just mention that you can access the slides for today's webinar at any time by going to the Handouts tab on your control panel, and you can download them there. Additionally, there will be time for a Q&A at the end of the webinar, but don't feel like you have to save your questions to the end. So if you have a question that comes up during today's webinar, you can go to the Questions tab on the control panel and type your question in there, and the presenters will ask it if they have time for all the questions during the Q&A session at the end. And now I'd like to introduce you to the facilitator for today's webinar, Josh Fothergill. Josh is the lead author of both the State of Digital IA Practice and Enabling Digital EIA in Nigeria. He has regularly led in-depth reviews into IA systems, including the UK's Proportionate EIA Strategy, Global EIA Accreditation Systems, and linking the circular economy and IA. Josh founded Fothergill Training and Consulting to provide more expertise or independent expertise and capacity building services, and has trained over 1,000 IA professionals over the last 5 years. He previously spent a decade at IEMA co-authoring much of the UK's IA guidance over that period and creating the award-winning EIA Quality Mark Scheme. So with that, Josh, over to you.
Thank you very much, Keisha, for that wonderful introduction. Just let me adjust the slides. So thank you very much, Keisha, for that, and welcome everyone to this 7th in our Digital Impact Assessment webinar series. There's nearly just over 300 of us now online. So whether you're an early riser on the east coast of the US, around 8 a.m. for you guys, or kind of a late worker doing some kind of CPD over in Hong Kong or Asia Pacific around 8 p.m. your time, then it's great to have you here, or if you're anywhere in between. So welcome. We're going to be talking about artificial intelligence in impact assessment today. But what I wanted to do, and what I do with all of these in the series, is to just give those who are perhaps a little bit less familiar with digital impact assessment just an introduction and context around what is digital impact assessment. So why me in terms of talking about this? Well, in 2021, I was fortunate enough, my company and myself were fortunate enough to win an innovation grant from the International Association for Impact Assessment. And that helped fund the piece of research that you see on the screen just there, the State of Digital Impact Assessment Practice Report. And that was a review we did engaging with impact assessment community around the world about different advances around digital impact assessment. How do different people perceive it? What are the issues in relation to it? And everything kind of that fit within that. So it's still a very useful document. You can access it either through the IAIA's resources pages, as Keisha just mentioned, or through the link that you see at the top of the page there. However, as you can well imagine, particularly with digital practice and digital approaches, things move quite quickly. So whilst we launched the report in December 2021, we have created this digital impact assessment webinar series to try and keep people up to date and to explore some of the case examples in a bit more detail. So you can see the various presentations we've had there in terms of workspaces, in terms of how big data is being used in Western Australia. We have had something on the on artificial intelligence before about the IFC's Molina system, and all of these webinars you can go back and watch again, either through the IAIA's webinar tab, or there is a link to them through that web link that you have on the top of the page. We obviously have today's webinar. There are some coming up as well, and the aspiration, we haven't actually got all the details in to IAIA headquarters as yet, but the aspiration certainly is on the 4th of September to have a session where someone who is leading on the AI application in the World Bank within impact assessment, and Giuseppe Magro, who's the chair of the IAIA 25 conference, will hopefully be available to speak to you. So there will be more coming up in relation to this series, but of course, let's move on to why digital impact assessment and what it means. So back in 2020, 2021, there was very little agreement, should we say, on what digital impact assessment was. Those at the leading edge of the field wanted to perhaps highlight the activities that they were doing and saw, perhaps PDF copies of documents and the use of basic drones or data capture devices as quite old hat versus what they'd been doing and what they were leading on. However, there were others who were, just bringing in those approaches, or their regulations and legislation didn't allow to move away from hard copy or physical signature of hard copy, should we say, for approval. So as part of the process, we thought it was quite important to create a definition, and as the IAIA is a broad church that likes to bring the impact assessment community together, the definition we ended up with was quite a broad definition. So digital impact assessment within the IAIA's definition is the uses of advances in digital technologies and their applications in the pursuit of enabling more effective impact assessment practice. So I guess the crux of that definition, the crux of that message, is that if we're going to bring digital technology and approaches into impact assessment, it has to be about improving the process. And what that means in terms of the process and where that fits can obviously be very varied, but it shouldn't just be technology for technology's sake, or creating technology that is perhaps cheaper but downgrades the process. Of course, a broad definition is great, but then how do we actually begin to categorize and talk about digital impact assessment? And that's where the report went in and identified these 10 different elements. And you can see here on the left-hand side, all of these 5 areas are more kind of approaches and technologies that exist in the wider world and are then being brought in or being used to and being applied to impact assessment. So things like artificial intelligence that we'll talk about today, virtual reality, etc. How are they being applied within impact assessment? The other side, the right-hand side, was where there'd actually been specific projects that were built around particular features in impact assessment and built out, so screening tools, platforms to work and deliver the impact assessment in, digital reporting and those type of activities. Clearly things move on at an increasing pace when it comes to impact assessment practice, but particularly the digital side of things. I think it's really worth noting now that actually what I'm seeing more and more isn't, kind of individual. There are, of course, individual examples of digital screening tools coming in or stakeholder engagement approaches on specific projects. But what I'm seeing with the more advanced ends of practice is that we're seeing a number of these different areas kind of linking together. So certainly what we'll hear about later today, artificial intelligence is being used, but linking into online data systems and information that's available online, and then being used or helping the application of some of these areas in terms of how we work on digital impact assessment and how we bring forward our reports, or perhaps how we identify stakeholders and those type of things. So we're increasingly seeing more, I suppose, bringing together of these boxes or combinations of these boxes coming forward, and that's really great to see, I think, in terms of practice advancing. So the report highlighted plenty of examples from around the world. I'm certainly not going to talk you through all of those there. You can go to the report and look into those if that's something you're interested about. However, what you need to appreciate is that obviously with the printed reports, those things, do move on. So those are what was kind of, I suppose, the cutting edge and going on in 2020, 2021. As Keisha mentioned, if you really want to see the kind of cutting edge or state of digital impact assessment practice as to where we are now or just next year in 2025, then Bologna is going to be the place to be in May next year for the IAIA's 2025 conference. And if you want to influence and help lead that discussion, then you have until the 18th of July to propose sessions in relation to that conference, which kind of shape what will get talked about, whether that's AI, whether that's digital technology, or whether you just want to talk about something on resettlement or biodiversity. If you just want to provide a paper, an example, a case example of what you're doing, then it's from September and through October that you'll be able to do that. So, lots out there in terms of practice, the webinar series, the reports, but if you really want to see the cutting edge, make sure you make your way to Bologna for IAIA 25. What was highlighted in the report as well is, if we are and as we move forward with these digital technologies, there's a number of areas that need to be managed in terms of kind of change and thinking about applications and issues within the impact assessment process. Now, many of these aren't new, many of these have existed before. We need to think about data, quality and cost, engagement, safety, privacy, security with our impact assessment processes previously. But when we're bringing in digital tools, the way we have to think about these issues, the way we have to consider them may well change. And therefore, perhaps some of the capabilities and the competencies of impact assessors need to adapt as well. So when we're looking to bring more digital tools into things, we first want to be thinking across these areas that are on the screen of, how relevant are they to the digital approach I'm thinking about? How then might there be different ways that I need to think about these issues than a traditional impact assessment? And then if we think there are particular issues that need to be thought about, then how are we going to manage those and how are we going to move forward with those? And sometimes that might mean bringing different skills into the team than perhaps we're used to. Now, the final thing that the report did was pose a number of questions back to practice. So, of course, we couldn't answer everything within a single kind of report into kind of the state of digital practice around the world. So it answered a number of these questions, asked and posed a number of these questions back to practice. And you can see them there. Can digital impact assessment provide new ways to demonstrate ESG outcomes? So how might we be able to link impact assessment processes, follow-up procedures, due diligence with ESG tools? How might we kind of move to different geography approaches? Might we be able to kind of democratize the impact assessment process more by having these open source data? But the one you see there in orange is the one that we're really going to focus on today. What role will artificial intelligence play in the future delivery of impact assessment process? I think it's a really interesting topic, and that is what we're going to do now. So I'm now going to move on and introduce Ildiko Almasi Simsik, who is the founder of E&S Solutions. Now, I'm really, really pleased we've got Ildiko here today. She's a huge asset, in my view, to the impact assessment profession. As while she is certainly a tech entrepreneur, that role has certainly come far more lately to her professional career. Her background actually is a seasoned social development specialist. She's worked with the IFC, with the World Bank, EBRD, IIB across nearly 15 years. She's therefore walked the talk of impact assessment for many years. She's seen the realities on the ground of what the situation is. Therefore, she's not just read a book and decided to kind of have a go at impact assessment with artificial intelligence. And actually, talking about books, she is herself an author of an award-winning book in relation to what is social impact. But you don't want to hear from me wittering on. So now I'm going to hand over the webinar to Ildiko and help us understand how AI can help ourselves and, as the humans in the loop, deliver impact assessment. So over to you, Ildiko.
Thank you, Josh, and thank you to the IAIA network for inviting me and letting me talk about my little babies. So first of all, E&S Solutions is a company I founded this year. This was not on the bingo card for me as a social specialist to be involved in technology in any ways, but I identified a lot of issues that were kind of keeping me back from delivering at a fast pace that was expected of me. So over the past couple of years, I've experimented with certain like low-tech ideas to make my life as a social specialist easier. So a few years ago, I published this Wikipedia of resettlement legislation. And then last year, I met my technology team where we started talking about my job and the tasks and the kind of tools that were available for other industries, but were missing from our industry. So we decided to see last year if we could develop something that helps me solve my problems. And that's how this whole company started. So what's really unique about this is that we have the deep technical E&S expertise combined with world-leading technology and AI experts who have proven achievements in different industries. So what I wanted to do is not to reinvent the wheel, but to repurpose existing technologies that are used in various other industries and create a tailored version for E&S performance practitioners. So my main mission and this company's main mission is to empower all of the E&S practitioners to do better job with more efficiency and use technology to enhance the human capacity and not let it be overpowered, like not let it overpower us, basically. So what I will talk about today is our thought process in coming up with our flagship product, My Ezra. And there is a little surprise, the launch of our new product, My Ezra's little sister, the private Ezra. And then I have a lot of demos and videos for you to go through the full E&S workflow using AI. So you will see how it seamlessly integrates into the work that you can do. And then obviously we'll talk about upcoming exciting products that we're developing. So the big picture issue that most of you face is this increased workload. Like all of a sudden, E&S performance management matters. Like all of a sudden, it's not only the IFIs and the development finance institutions that have an increased number of projects every year and is pushed to like do the commitment and the disbursement and deliver more development finance than ever, but it's also a push from the private sector to meet international best practice, international industry standards, which leads to an increased workload for consultants like myself. So when I was thinking about how to even like put our problems and like the tasks into words, I realized that we have some like incredible problems. We have more data and information than we ever had. I remember when I started working as a social specialist, I had to like go through hundreds of websites to find relevant information for my impact assessments, and that was like a data scarcity. And we are now at the complete opposite end of this issue. We have more data than ever. Also, in my career, I hopped around. So I worked for IFIs, consultancies, private sector clients, and it became obvious that we have issues with the IT systems available to us and the filing systems. So while we're quite diligent in document control for our clients, we are much less diligent when it comes to our internal filing systems, which means that whenever I joined a new place and I inherited the project, I had access or limited access to the past project information and like the whole like thought process, the institutional thought process around the approaches to the issues. So the increased workload is also partly because an increased level of accountability. So we have more and more organizations and the public who's more aware than ever, calling us out as consultancies and IFIs on the kind of projects we support. So when we started brainstorming about the workflow and the tasks, my biggest probably one of my biggest measure of what I think should be automated or could be somehow supported by technology is looking at my daily tasks and seeing what are the tasks that I enjoy the most and what are the tasks that I think are, you know, just taking up a lot of time and give me limited benefits. So obviously, as most of you, the best part of the job is traveling and seeing my projects and engaging with the people and understanding their perceptions and then coming up with the most appropriate mitigation measures or compensation measures. But when we started looking down with people who are not part of our industry, I had to really think about the different stages of the E&S workflow, what are the deliverables, what kind of data we gather, and what are the sort of like outputs or documents or reports, how I do my daily job. And I remember giving some examples of like looking for like terms of reference. And most of the time somebody said, okay, like email this person, they did a similar project. And I might hear back in a week or two, I might get a positive response or might not. And then, you know, it was just this lack of like standardization and looking at what steps of delivering an ESIA or delivering a project are steps that could be like ideal candidates for this type of automation. So we came up with the three main areas. One of them is the checklist or templates for documents that only provides the structure. So it helps me as a practitioner to take something like a framework to guide my thought process when I'm developing terms of reference, scoping report, ESIA, LRP, whatever document. The second big category is my personal problem solver, the accessing data, statistics, and information for new projects, but also for past projects, and that's the third column. So the third pillar is just really accessing previous project information. And when I was working as a consultant for several IFIs in a staff member capacity, this became like my biggest issue, that I inherited a bunch of projects and it was easier to find the disclosure documents from the external website than going in the online shared folder and looking through that. And if anyone's doing portfolio reviews, you know that as you go along, you get asked questions about like budgets and number of affected people, number of households, all of this. And it takes time to find the relevant document, go through the relevant document and pick out this one number that they're asking for. So my technology team said, okay, it's amazing, we can solve these problems. But then we had to start brainstorming about how exactly are we going to solve these problems. And this is a crash course on AI. I had a very, very steep learning curve to understand the different layers, functionalities, capabilities, and really zoom in on how this is applicable or could be applicable to my problem of accessing data, information, past project information, statistics. So when I was in Dublin, I actually joined the working group on the principles of using AI. And one of the first things that was discussed at the table is, okay, how do we define AI? What is artificial intelligence and what is just a technology solution that's, for example, automates access to information or automates gathering and processing of data? So AI is by definition a technology that enables these computers and machines to simulate human intelligence and problem-solving capabilities. So returning to our problem, or my problem as a social specialist, I asked myself, okay, what kind of capabilities, human capabilities, do I want this bot to mimic? And the first obvious answer was Googling, because that's what I spend most of my time doing, looking for secondary baseline data. Okay, and then we had the second big question is, are we dealing with big data, and what is big data? So big data typically refers to these large, complex data sets that are coming from a variety of sources. They could be structured or unstructured. And they asked me, okay, how big do you think your data is? Like, give us a number of like terabytes. Like, how much is this, all of this E&S knowledge that you want to understand and work with? And we had no answer. We didn't know how big this data was, but we knew that our big data is not the kind of high frequency big data that you might get from like smart agriculture projects where you have the sensors that pick up like every second or every minute on the humidity, the temperature, the soil humidity, you know, so this is not the kind of big data that we were working with. And then when it came to like applying AI, we were again discussing what's the best like capability that we want to work with. So narrow AI is the most basic type of AI that is designed to carry out one specific task. For example, voice recognition. It recognizes the voice, but it's not able to learn skills beyond its design. Is this something that's applicable to our project or our problems? Maybe. And then there's the second layer, the artificial general intelligence, which is what most of you are probably most familiar with, because generative AI applications such as the ChatGPT or self-driving cars, or like these type of applications use AGI, because this type of intelligence can basically learn and perform tasks and think in a like a more human-like way. Of course, it could be trained and it could be improved, but we were thinking that this is where the industry is right now, and this should be able to meet our needs in terms of solving for our problems. And the artificial superintelligence is some sci-fi as of now. I let you decide if you think it's theoretical only or not at this stage, but it's basically an AI that's smarter than humans. And then again, one step further, looking at the functionality. Okay, we can like deal with like a pre-programmed AI to carry out a specific task. We can work with an AI that can learn and think and understand our data. Okay, that's already mainstream through ChatGPT. What other types of like functionalities are there that we could use for our E&S problem solving? So the reactive machines respond and do the tasks that they're programmed to do. They have no memory and like no learning capability. This is the type of AI that's used to filter like spam emails or send you like personalized recommendation based on your shopping history, for example. And then there's the limited memory AI, which is what most of the applications currently use are applying, which, as the name suggests, has some limited memory. So it can store past information, learn from past data. It can even make some like predictions building on this like knowledge and previous experience. And then again, the last two are things that are somewhat theoretical at this stage. The theory of mind, which is the artificial emotional intelligence. I think a few weeks ago, our Facebook or our LinkedIn page shared an article with an experiment at a university with artificial emotional intelligence, where the bot identified the complex human emotion and was able to adjust its response in light and also make predictions. And then there's the self-aware AI, which is again the story of the sci-fi, probably the Sophia, the robot, that's the most famous example of this. So now that we know what types of AI exist in terms of capability and functionality, we went one step further and asked the question, okay, we kind of like narrowed it down to narrow AI, AGI, reactive, and limited memory. But how do we want to use it? Like, what is the kind of analytics of our big data is it that we want it to apply to? So this descriptive analytics is basically the dashboards and the reports when the bot is just summarizing a large data set. Like, this sounds like a perfect solution for us. And then there's a more diagnostic type of analysis where it's providing some like reflection on why certain things are the way they are. Then there's the predictive, when building on previous analysis and previous like data history or trends, it predicts future scenario or future trends or outcomes. This is kind of what they use for the climate modeling. And I know, reading through our literature, the E&S literature, there were questions and concerns about AI being a black box, and we don't know how these predictions are made. We don't really know what's the training data and what sort of trends the machine or the bot is looking at. And then there's the prescriptive, which is AI analyzing our data and asking us, okay, what is your desired outcome? Because I can recommend actions that most likely will take you there. But I think, okay, let me decide that at this stage. But it's good to know that this level of analytics with AI is available for future use. So at some point, we might be able to test whether human E&S experts come up with better mitigation measure or compensation measure, or is it the AI who's coming up with a more appropriate solution? Taking one step even further, in our brainstorming with my team, we thought about how to incorporate the use of automation. So automation is when you let the machine perform certain tasks, and they can do it from end to finish automation, like a complete task automated, but you can have it's set up where there's some human intervention. So for example, I will tell you in our case what we did. And then, no AI slide would be complete without talking about machine learning and deep learning. I will not go into details on this, but machine learning is a subset of AI where it learns from a data set and a database. There are different types of learning. The supervised learning basically means that you label the data, so the bot is basically classifying the data. It reminds me of my SPSS years at university where we did the logistic regression analysis. That's like a supervised machine learning. And then there's the unsupervised, where you don't label the data, so you rely on the machine to pick up on like patterns and analyze like clusters of this data. And the semi-supervised, where you provide a small amount of labeled data and a large amount of unlabeled data. And it's basically a bridge between the supervised and unsupervised learning. And reinforcement learning will be very important because it means that the bots are learning through thumbs up, thumbs down in our case. But it's basically in the decision tree when they're making a decision to what answer to give you, you provide a feedback, and it is this continuous feedback loop that is enforcing the machine learning and leads to much better outcomes or much better like answers. And then the deep learning is a type of machine learning that's using these neural networks. Again, like I am not going into details because this is already a lot, I appreciate. But this feeds in nicely with how we thought about defining the problem on an industry individual level, going through the workflow to select the type of tasks within this E&S workflow that could be good candidates, and then understanding what is the available technology that we can apply to it. And then the next step was obviously deciding how to do it in a transparent, ethical manner with keeping the person in the driving seat. So what I didn't want to do is come up with something that works instead of us. I wanted to come up with something that works for us. And there's actually this human in the loop principle that's exactly this: reinforcement learning and making the humans the drivers of the operation. So what it means in our case is that we have our human experts who select the training data, who select the data that goes into this knowledge base, and we use AI to automate and undertake certain tasks in this like whole process flow. So we use AI to automate the data collection and processing, and also to rename each document that we have. But again, I will talk about the renaming in a later slide. Then we also use AI to access and visualize this data. We had a lot of brainstorming. Okay, we collect this information that we need, we automate, the AI will help you find it and look through it and analyze and do whatever you want. But what is the best way for an E&S expert to access this information? And I had this like idea of this like magical box, like a magical Google, that I can just ask a question and get an answer. So with the emergence of ChatGPT and other large language models that are trained on certain types of data sets, it was the obvious choice for an entry-level AI product for our industry. So we use this LLM to retrieve the data, and the data is then provided to the expert in a text format. And again, we are in the driving seat, so we just get this number or this summary or this data, but it's up to us to interpret and incorporate this analysis into our projects. So my Ezra is an environmental social research assistant that is powered by this chatbot or large language model. And the whole objective of my Ezra is to help you access the information that you need. It's connected to a very comprehensive, I think it's one of the world's most comprehensive E&S specific knowledge bases. And it includes all the citations and sources that you can click on and get more context or just verify the information that you receive. We've had several iterations and of this product. As we were developing the model, we tried different models to see what's the most appropriate for our industry. So what's in our knowledge base? There was a question, I think, before the webinar about what's in the knowledge base. So I thought, okay, if we're thinking about E&S institutional knowledge, what do we need? We need the disclosed project documents. So we got all of those, everything that was ever disclosed by any IFI, DFI, EP bank, export credit agency. We got the national legislation, partly from the disclosed documents and more increasingly directly from national legal lexicons. We have all sorts of academic industrial research, not only on the very specific E&S topics, but also on sectors and climate change and broader like socioeconomic assessments. And we also pick up on all of the IFI research papers. So everything that was published specific to, again, industries or regions, we would have that in the knowledge base. We have the whole international conventions and agreements database. So you can ask a question, what ILO conventions Romania signed up for, and you get the list. We also get the IFI policies, guidance notes, good practice notes, all of the international regional statistics, and all of the national statistics that are available online. This means we have millions of documents in our knowledge base, and we thought about how to keep it up to date and how to maintain this. So every month the MyEzra bots go through this list of websites that we monitor and pick up on the latest project disclosures and information, and it goes through the automated data retrieval, cleaning, renaming process, and it's all going in a knowledge base every month. The chatbot, there will be plenty of demos, so don't worry if you don't see it. It's just a little image to show you that it looks similar to other products that you might be familiar with. We wanted to make the use as intuitive as possible, so you don't have to pick up a new skill or learn anything new. You can just ask a question, get an answer with the clickable sources, and it's easy for a human to see if the sources match the question or match the documents. We have been training this bot for, I think, almost a year now. It's getting better and better at picking up the right information and the right answers. And this reinforcement learning, what I was talking about, is how the humans provide the feedback with the thumbs up, thumbs down button, and our backend guys can adjust similarity criteria or improve the model to pick up the most appropriate answers. The renaming, this is one of my favorite little projects in this big project, because one of our original concept ideas, when we started testing, we tried it with a limited data set. And when I looked at the sources, it was a bunch of random numbers and names and version 2 and dates, as you see on the left-hand side. And it wasn't always obvious to me what the document was and whether it was related to the question that I asked. So we came up with this script that uses AI to rename each document in the standard naming convention. The type of document, publisher, year. Again, I was thinking for myself, how would I know if an answer is correct? what information would I need to immediately verify? So for example, if I'm asking about resettlement and I don't get the RAP reference, do I believe this answer, right? And then obviously we will talk about the use cases later on, but these were some of the main features and some of the main use cases that we came up with while developing the product. And it also became obvious that MyEzra is an ideal research tool because it has the raw statistics from the national, regional, and international statistical databases, all sorts of academic and industry research papers. So we have actually implemented with asking more contextual questions for general research on gender, inclusion, or certain like employment or certain like economic research type questions, and it did pretty well. And then the little baby, my private Ezra, we heard the customer feedback and we heard that people wanted to use this technology for documents that are not publicly disclosed. So what happens to that pre-disclosure ESIA package, or what happens to the ESMS? I've recently done a review of an ESMS over 1,000 pages. It's impossible for a human to not make an error. What it means is not picking up on inconsistencies with roles and responsibilities and like the main ESMP versus some like sub-management plan. So the private Ezra is a completely separate product where you as the user is in control of your own data. So you're the data controller, which means you upload your information and you can erase it. We used a different LLM model, which was an open source model that we trained for this purpose to make sure that none of the questions or information is leaked through any like API. So it's completely private. And we also added the functionality to invite team members from within your organization and outside your organizations. So currently you have unlimited users or team members you can add to your private knowledge base. It looks and feels similar to the MyEzra. And we currently limit the uploads to 100 documents, but this can of course change as the product is improving. I've talked about some of the use cases, and there was a question about using MyEzra for investigations of project complaints, and the private Ezra is the solution for that. So I'm just going to start this demonstration. It's got no sound, so I can do the voiceover. So we're going to do a wind project in Kosovo, and the first question I asked is an outline for a scoping report. As you see, the sources I named there from the USAID site and some other websites that are relevant. The first part of the question is just that, an outline of the main headings I would need for my scoping report. It is tailored to wind farms, so you will see wind farm mentioned there. And then for the section details, it provides me with like a one-liner context. Again, it's not writing a report for me, but it is helping me frame my thought process around, you know, where to even begin and what areas to even like think about. Then there were questions about MyEzra's capability for contextual risk analysis. So here is the question and the answer for you. This provides information on the various environmental, social risks. I think even the climate change risks are picked up, but if not, I know we asked specifically about any sort of like climate change risks, specifically for this part of the world for a wind project. You see the thumbs up, thumbs down, that's for the reinforcement learning. So I think in the other video, I do click on that, and then we get your feedback. And we also get written feedback. You have the option to leave comments. So we pick up on those and we improve our model, and we improve the length, the content, and like everything associated with the answer based on your feedback. So I know that most of my initial questions and the previous videos that were updated were heavily tilted towards the social, but that was because of my background and how I use the product through my own work and for the projects that I've been working on. So this is, the terms of reference. Again, it provides the outline. So I have a starting point, but again, it doesn't write it for me. You in the handout, you will get the link to the YouTube videos, so you can see and stop the video and zoom in and get more familiar with the answer and how the bot feels and what it looks like. But basically, in this workflow, I am also asking for baseline data for an ESIA, and I'm asking for headings and relevant statistics. Again, this is like a very generic question. When you will see more specific questions for women's situation in entrepreneurship or women's role in agriculture in a certain country, and it picks up from these various sources, including like the Food and Agriculture Organization or any sort of UN publication or UN Women publication. Yeah, and then the questions for the social specialists on land use patterns and issues around that. I think I'm also going to ask about legislation. And as you see, returning to some of my earlier points on identifying tasks and issues of accessing data and information. So this is really the entry-level AI product to address those concerns around data access. And yeah, here's the legal framework, expropriation in Kosovo. I could switch back to the other private Ezra because I tested on a project in Kosovo. So I was switching back and forth between the two applications. And in this video, this is the latest beta version for myself because we are testing different LLM models to see if there's, with the new updates, if there's anything in terms of these new additional capabilities that could be incorporated into our workflow and our product. So I am actually testing on a different smaller data set using the using the newest GPT model, which is, I think, available for the users already. And in the interest of time, I'm just going to go through the next one, which is an older video where I ask project-specific information for my work as an IFI staff member. So I'm asking about budgets, number of affected people, project impacts, all sorts of things that I needed for my work when I was working for the IFI. And here you see the reinforcement learning, where I provide the feedback with the thumbs up. And there was the option to leave some more text and more feedback. And again, it's often it's the art of how you phrase a prompt. That was something that required a little bit of learning and adjustment for me, because one example is asking about affected people, and the bot did not pick up on affected people. And I talked to my technology team, and they were like, well, all of these villages are affected according to the ESIA, but if you know that in our terminology, an affected person is someone who's affected by livelihood restoration or land acquisition, and that was my question. But without this context, the bot didn't pick up on it, and my team didn't know why this was an issue. So this just demonstrates that you think something is so obvious, but it is not, because you have to think in like the way the machines think, which could be quite different. And it often requires a little trial and error to get the prompts right. And that's why when we were thinking about the pricing structure for the use, we did not limit the questions that the users can ask. And then I can leave the videos running during the questions, but I want to show you the private Ezra. This is the newest product. It's not on our website yet. This is what it looks like. As you can see, I have my team, and I can upload my files and invite people. Here, the files are not renamed because these are your personal private files, so there's no need for any sort of referencing or renaming, because this large language model is only connected to your private knowledge base. So you can use this I use this for ESMS review, but here, these are all publicly disclosed documents to avoid any sort of issues with privacy. So I'm asking some like basic questions. Some of them are similar to what I was asking when I was doing my ESMS review. The DP is the disclosure package here, and it's going to list all the ESI disclosure package documents. I ask differently to see if I get a different answer, but no, I got the same answer. So this product will most likely be on our website in the coming 1 or 2 weeks. This will be available separate to my Ezra, because I know some of our users are more interested in using this private Ezra for their investigations and pre-disclosure ESIA package review, etc. So that's why we decided not to keep it together with my Ezra. But for those who have my Ezra, there will be a button to switch between the two applications, because as I was doing my ESMS review, I noticed that some things popped up, like the legislation or the international conventions that were applicable, and I wanted to make sure that I double check it. So I went to the My Ezra application, and I asked the questions like which ILO conventions are applicable in this country, which ones have been ratified, and I got the list. And then when I reviewed labor accommodation management plan, I could ask questions on the My Ezra about the IFC EBRD guidance notes, like specifications like ratio of workers to bathrooms and like sinks, like some things that I wouldn't remember. And my review was just so much more informed. But yeah, I will go back and like keep the videos running during the questions if there's interest. But you will also get access to the links in the handouts. So what is next for us? My Ezra will have new features. We're reliant on feedback from the users and feedback from the industry to understand the appetite and the general tolerance of unlocking more of these like new features. Is there a need, or is there a desire for more predictive capabilities, more calculations, or more generative capabilities? We are making the renaming script freely available. So if you or your organization is interested, we can send you the free copy of the script with the instructions. So we will not be involved. You can just run the script based on the instructions. We'll tell you everything how to do it, and you can rename all of your internal files based on our naming conventions. We're working on the smartest map you've ever seen. I know we are ambitious. I had this big vision for Ezra Geo to be a very smart, very useful tool for practitioners, where you can just like screenshot, extract information, pin your project, see the other IFI projects, and be able to like interact or chat with that information to inform like cumulative impact assessment or strategic assessments. And we have a lot more ideas on how AI can support automation of stakeholder engagement and grievance mechanisms. Some of you might be aware that we started an E&S project newsletter. So every 2 weeks on the Friday at lunchtime, UK time, in your inbox, you would see the newly disclosed IFI projects or any IFI projects that had an update. And of course, the topic of next year's IAIA is quite befitting for us. So we will be putting in a session proposal. So you will see us there, one capacity or the other. And yes, that's it for now. Thank you.
Wow, thank you very much, Ildiko. Fantastic. Really, really interesting. So many questions coming in. Unfortunately, we won't be able to keep your video running because we're going back onto my side of things, or at least if you do keep your video going, people won't see it. So apologies for that. But as you say, those links can be shared and people will be able to access and watch back this side of things. Loads and loads of questions coming in. I guess one thing just to answer some of the questions that the audience are coming in. Obviously, this is an IAIA presentation. It's not an infomercial, so we did ask Ildiko to kind of limit kind of discussing the subscription model and pricing and that kind of things. But just Ildiko, for your reference, there have been quite a lot of questions about that. That's our fault rather than Ildiko being kind of obtuse on that side. That was our request. So I guess just to kick us off, obviously, you know, there's been a number of kind of questions come in, and we've seen AI kind of progressing forwards in terms of its usage in many different sectors. But there's also, I suppose, a kind of fear and concern potentially around, oh, it might take our jobs, it might do lots of different other things. So how do you bring people with you, either to overcome the kind of buzz around AI and actually get to these kind of practical conversations about how it can actually help human beings do roles, or to move people who are perhaps concerned that, you know, it is simply going to undermine our profession? How do we move beyond those areas?
That if you remember the slide about the workflow and the problem was very much defined as where don't I want to waste my time? Where can I use a machine to do something with much more efficiency and much faster than what I could do? And for my Ezra, like that was at the forefront of our thinking. I did not want a bot that would write my full report. I just wanted it to give me the information so I can use my professional judgment and come up with mitigation measures or compensation measures. And as I said in the what's next slide, you know, it's really up to us as an industry to decide what we're comfortable with and how we define this like ethics. But what I noted during the focus group discussions and when I'm talking to colleagues about this is like, okay, so we can work more efficiently. We have this huge workload. Everyone's asking for the next TOR, the ESIA, the review, like how can we expand our human capacity as an individual and deliver more? And I think this is the key point here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, I get that, and yes, thank you for referring back to those slides. That's very useful. Wow, there's so many questions and there's more coming in. So I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up with a couple of perhaps wider kind of questions or areas that people have sent in. Then we'll move on to a whole bunch that are about what the tool is capable of and those type of things. So there was a number of questions as you were going along saying the acronyms are challenging for impact assessment professionals, LLMs, large language models, APIs, application programming interfaces. I may know what the acronyms mean in terms of words, but knowing what that actually means, you know, rather than just those three words in the English language. So some people kind of saying, you know, this could be a challenge for people in impact assessments in terms of engaging with this and understanding it and therefore building their trust. And then a number of others linked to that, kind of highlighting the fact that to be effective in terms of the use of AI tools, it can be about as much about how you ask the question in AI language, the prompts you use. So is this something that needs training? Are these areas things that need working on? Is this something for either yourselves to provide that training or something that IAIA should be looking at trying to provide kind of advice and documents in that area?
Okay, so the acronyms, yeah, I was kind of like hesitant to put that slide together, but I wanted to provide like a brief crash course on all things AI to enhance the understanding of what it can and cannot do and how it's not just some abstract black box of a machine that decides on something without us. So that was the only purpose. And yeah, if there's a need, then we can put an FAQ on the acronyms and the list of like acronyms that we use or key concepts on our website so people can read through. But in terms of engaging with the tool, and I think it's important to emphasize that you don't have to know any of these API, any of these acronyms to be able to use this tool because it is intuitive. It's like your ChatGPT. You ask a question, you get an answer, you see a source, you can click on a source and like see for yourself. That's why we did not limit the number of questions. And we try to be as transparent in what's in the knowledge base without overpowering everyone with thousands of links that we follow every month to build the trust through the citations and the referencing. So whatever feedback, you know, initially when we were playing around with the concept and I had this like little like concept version, the baby version that I was playing with, and I got weird answers and it didn't pick up the right things. I was concerned how and whether we will ever be able to train it so that it can read my mind and like do the trick. And that ties in with the question around the prompts. So there will be more blogs from me coming out on the prompting, but we also recognized through my inability to ask bot-friendly questions that we need some more bots to interpret my questions to the other bots so they can do better. So we have at the back end some assistants who pick up on your questions and try to answer it like as best as you can. But we had enterprise clients sign up, and we actually designed the full like questionnaires, like the prompt library for them, for their specific like workflow for their different businesses, like those who do the due diligence, those who do the ESIAs, and those who monitor projects. So everything is possible.
Can you just quickly explain what a bot is for the audience as well?
Yeah, so the bot is the AI script that is designed to carry out the specific task. So when I talk about the bot that's renaming the script, so it's running a script that's picking up on those parameters that are in the naming conventions from the document and automatically renames based on those.
Okay, thank you. I think there's a whole bunch of these questions around these abbreviations and that certainly aren't just for you, Ildiko, to fix, but I think that's maybe something for Keisha and parts of IAIA to start working on as well as the great work that you're doing in your blogs and everything. I'm going to ask one question from kind of a wider thing, and then we'll dive on some questions about the tool itself and its capabilities, because we've had lots of those. I think, unfortunately, those who've asked questions that are about wider capabilities of AI, we probably won't get onto those, I'm afraid, but I think they could be very, very useful questions and things to be posed to the IAIA's conference next year about standardizing formatting of documents using XBRL, which I had to Google myself to figure out what that was, and you know, can an AI tool actually start doing significant evaluation? We won't go into those, unfortunately, today, just because of the number of questions. But Peter asks a question of, how can we ensure AI is used in a way that doesn't harm kind of indigenous knowledge and the knowledge systems that inevitably aren't going to be present on the online system where our AI is going out and finding its content?
Yeah, so this is something that was a very, very useful feedback during the IAIA conference. How do we capture knowledge that's not digitized? And there have been attempts to digitize this knowledge, and I would be very happy to help out any way I can. It is true. So currently, what we pick up, especially on IPs and indigenous knowledge, is from all of the studies, the statistics, the project documents, the indigenous people's plans, the UN, that's available online. This is a limitation at this stage, but I hope that people who are more informed in this indigenous like world will be able to advise on what's the best way to digitize this knowledge and make it accessible for like an AI to use.
Okay, thank you. Okay, let's dive into some of the questions around Mayasra or the various iterations of the tool. So, where to start from these? Okay, does it provide comments on specific issues within the documents? So, for example, is it going to be able to tell me if a particular area is prone to flood risk, or other specific kind of issues and data? How specific is it going to be for me?
Yeah, so again, it depends on the prompt. It's got the knowledge. So especially for the Ezra Geo, we're working on obtaining the flood risk maps, but flood risk and like protected areas and protected species, they're all picked up from ESIAs, IUCN, like these usual sources. So in the video, you will see that I'm asking questions like, what are the protected species in Albania or random country? And it will give you a list with the sources. So quite specific.
Okay, fantastic. So I think that addresses a number of other questions or parts of those questions. It's always tricky to link. So I guess another question that has come up for a few different people is what countries is the tool most useful for? So someone's asked in relation to Malta and Canada, but perhaps I suppose those that perhaps are less regularly visited by the FIs versus things like Mozambique, Nigeria that we've had questions from as well. So is there a geographic slant that makes the tool more effective, less effective?
I guess it's unintentionally, it's more effective in areas where there's more information availability online. But I must say, like in terms of like Canada, for example, we have all of they disclose a lot of information. We have all of their statistics, all of their even national EIAs, like most of those things. And in terms of like Africa, there's actually, I think like 5, 6 different regional statistical like associations or organizations that provide a wide range of studies. So it's not necessarily just the project documents that inform my ESRA. It's also all sorts of like statistics and research papers that were published by any of these organizations, the Food and Agriculture organizations, the UN, the World Bank. So even if it's not a specific project, we might have a broader regional or country level study.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, those data sources are important. I know the country that I'm based in and most familiar with, the UK, unfortunately, chose not to take the opportunity in updating its regulations to create a kind of centralised database of environmental statements. So just in one part of the UK, England, there's like 300 local authorities. The little bots or these little programs that go out and find data for you would have to be linked into, which I guess could be done and may be done in the future, but probably isn't there at the moment because it's using more of the FI sources. That's really useful to understand. It's generating a lot of other questions as well. I guess an obvious one is, when we're thinking about numerous countries around the world, yes, a lot of them use, and a lot of the FIs obviously produce their reports in English as the main language, but there's quite a number of countries that obviously use other languages and obviously have their own languages that reports might be written in. So where's the tool's limitations? Does it only work in English? Can it pick up other languages?
So we did a trial in terms of the language capabilities where we had the version where the original language was put in a knowledge base and we interacted with that document in English and we got like really, really good answers. And then we tried using AI to translate the original document to English before putting in a knowledge base and interacting with it. And interestingly, it's the original language that worked the best. So we do pick up documents in other languages and local languages. Those are, if you remember the naming conventions, it's the original language of the document is there in the title. But currently my ESRA can only be used in English, but you can interact with non-English documents in English.
Okay. Yep, that makes sense. I think. Yeah. Cool. Okay, let's dive into I suppose some questions around data then. So how is this kind of tool or these kind of tools, how do you've talked a lot about large language models that infers words, but a lot of these reports, a lot of this baseline data, air quality numbers of species, that kind of thing, is going to be quantified. So how is it at kind of picking up those type of figures so that we can help find that pure baseline data? Is it able to do that, or is it able to help you cross-reference to that?
So it can pick up numbers. It can pick up numbers from tables. Where we're currently not in a position to like launch the capability is the image recognition and any sort of like making assessments based on the image recognition. But everything that is a letter or a number or a list, even if it's part of a table or part of whatever, like it's picked up. It's picked up by the bot. So you can ask questions like, I think in the private Ezra video, I asked questions, how many turbines will be installed, or how many farmers, how many land plots.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And as you said, this is about keeping the human in the loop. We're not trying to, kind of remove the thinking here. It's not whatever the answer comes up is your answer that you write in your report. You as the professional need to think about that and decide if you're going to use it and look at that. But to pick up on that area, how do you tell the difference between perhaps good sources, less legitimate sources? You said it goes and picks up, on a monthly basis, this new information. Well, some of that new information might say, this is the new approach to X. Please ignore A, B, and C that were produced a few years ago. How does it manage that for you, or is that something you need to do by looking at those references?
Yeah, so what we did, especially for like legislation type data, is that the new version replaces the old version. But if it's project and research, it's added in addition. And we encountered an issue where an ESIA was updated and redisclosed, but that's why we're keeping the humans in the loop. So whenever that's the case, when we were like trialing this automation of like data collection and like update every month, like I made sure that I went through the list and like I saw, and if the renaming picks up the same name for the file, then it's flagged for a human to look at it and make a decision like whether to keep both of them or to like replace the old one with the new.
Okay, yep, yep. So perhaps well, a very quick one, or well, I'll fire two at you on data, and then we'll move on because I recognise time where we're coming quite close to the end. Does it only access open source, or does it also get things that are behind literature that's behind paywalls? Is the first question, hopefully quite a quick answer. And then the next one was, how good is it at more specific geographies? So, when you're getting to the regional level where there might be additional legislation, when you're getting to the local level and you want to know, kind of what's that river called? What's that road reference? So hopefully those two questions.
Yeah, so we decided that for this first iteration of Ezra, we're not going behind the paywall. We have approached a few data providers to have subscription, industrial or whatever for commercial use. But what I thought was sufficient, like I thought there's sufficient information in there to improve my way of working for now, and we wanted to make this available for the people. So obviously we're continually like improving and exploring new ways, new technology, new models, upgrades. So we'll see what happens. And in terms of the specific geographies, there are, so in the ESIAs, there are like references to like regions within the country, or like I was asking questions around the environmental flow of like certain rivers, and I got like pretty good answers. Because remember, we don't only have like a few years of project documents, we have like decades. Like that's like thousands of projects.
Mm-hmm. Of course. Okay, we are heading towards the end. Let's see. I guess if we move on perhaps to a broader area, but there will be a specific element to this. So we had a broader question about stakeholder engagement and what your thoughts are on the potential for digitizing stakeholder engagement and maybe the use of AI. So beyond just kind of using messengers and social media and that kind of thing. And then we've just had a very recent question come in that asks, if someone has done a lot of engagement with kind of stakeholders and has a lot of qualitative interview data that they put into the private Ezra tool, would that then be able to do some analysis for them? So the broader stakeholder question and the Ezra question.
Yeah, so I think one of the products that I was thinking about is repurposing these customer service chatbots for grievance management and deploy it on like project or developer websites. And the main reason for doing that would be to get the complainant's feedback if the case is actually closed. Because right now I receive a grievance log as part of the annual review or annual monitoring report, and my client says, all complaints resolved, everyone's happy. So if I have a built-in mechanism where they can't close a case without the complainant agreeing that the case is closed, I think that would add value to this whole like reporting. So I believe that some of the parts of stakeholder engagement, like getting the information out there, making these little bots available to like provide summaries of ESIAs or information, I think that would be a good use case, but it will not like substitute the full face-to-face stakeholder engagement. And I must like come out saying that I'm pretty low tech when it comes to doing my actual job. Like I take the pen and paper and sit with the people and take notes. But then, you know, there are parts of the work that could be easier with the bots. And in terms of analysis, we currently don't have this capability because this is what a lot of other applications are doing. So this was not a problem I was trying to solve. There are other like qualitative research tools that could be much more useful than MyEsra.
Okay, thank you. I'm just going to ask one final question, and then we'll aim to wrap up. So hopefully we should be finishing pretty much on time. But I must say we probably had more questions to just you as a single presenter that we've ever had on these sessions. So I guess that's very positive for the potential conversations next year in Bologna at IAIA 25. So just a final question: how good is it? Different issues for impact assessment or environmental due diligence, I suppose. You know, is it better at biodiversity than resettlement? Health is always a real challenge for impact assessment and is sometimes, you know, a little bit forgotten. Are there more you need to kind of help develop certain areas such as health?
I think what we forget is we're thinking in human scale, and these are machines. So for a machine, it depends on the data you're feeding into it. So there's no, and the model is the same that we use for all these different areas. We had like thinking around, do we need different models for different like areas, but we decided to just simplify. So it's the same model for all sorts of questions. That means that the quality of the answer will really be dependent on the data that we put in the knowledge base. So I work closely with some of my biodiversity colleagues to understand the input data that they would need, the kind of questions they would ask. Obviously, the map would be like more informative to them, but even just understanding like list of protected areas, protected species, like that's huge. And in terms of health, we do have the from the international, regional, and national statistics, we have health data, mortality, like all sorts of like indicators. And from the publications, we also pick up on like health in like inevitably. That's not an area that I personally have tested in the MyEsra, but we have the information. So I expect, I have reasonable confidence that it would work.
Mhm, mhm. And I guess that's, you know, as you get more users and that type of thing who do pursue it in that might be where you can get some feedback and activities. We're going to draw the Q&A to a close there, so thank you very much, Ildiko, for taking all those questions, and we could probably have gone on at least another half hour with questions and probably just going through the acronyms and explaining what these various things are, but that obviously isn't your job, but is going to be a job for impact assessment as a community as these tools come in and increasingly come into the process to understand these and that type of thing. There, as I said, there have been many questions around the subscription side and understanding that, and also pleased to kind of have a pricing system that perhaps reflects where people are around the world. I will let people approach you on LinkedIn individually to kind of follow up on that. And hopefully people understand why we haven't gone into the detail of that as part of the thing. And thank you very much for staying away from too much of that. Obviously, the purpose of these is more CPD, and I think you've really helped kind of build capacity today. So thank you very much, Ildiko. I'm now going to hand back to Keisha to just do our kind of close out from the IAIA side. So that should move our slide on.
Great, thank you everybody. Thank you especially to Josh and Ildiko for the great presentation and discussion. As Josh mentioned, there were so many questions coming in, and it was a very engaging webinar. And if you do still have any questions that didn't get answered during the Q&A, or if maybe ones that you didn't get a chance to type in, there will be a survey at the end as you leave today's webinar. So first off, you can put any questions that didn't get answered into there or any new ones you have, and I will be sure to get those over to Josh and Ildiko after the webinar. But again, with that survey, there's also a spot to put in any suggestions for future webinar topics. So if there is something that you're interested in hearing about, please let me know, and I will do my best to organize a webinar on that topic and get some experts here to talk about it with you. So again, as I mentioned earlier, if there are any tidbits that you want to share from today's presentation, you can see our socials and hashtags there that you can share. If you're an IAIA member, please feel free to put something into the hub and start a conversation that way. That's a great resource for all of you members. And then just a reminder that in a day or two, you'll be receiving an email with a link to the recording along with the slides, but they are still available in that handouts tab right now if you'd like to download those before you leave. And like I mentioned, you'll have the survey, so please fill that out as you leave. And a final thanks to all of you who joined with us today. We know your time is valuable and we really appreciate you spending it with us. So thank you, and until next time, have a great day.